Right, so ladies and gentlemen, here we are, we're back at Aldgate East and I'm in Commercial Street, and what I propose to do now is to walk down Commercial Street towards Spitalfields. If you recall, I started out this series of videos by walking up the Aldgate High Street, Whitechapel the High Street, and then the Whitechapel Road to Whitechapel Underground Station, just to show you how the district was laid out. What I omitted to do was to take you down Commercial Street, so this is how I propose to end up, and this is going to be the absolute very last of the videos about Jack the Ripper, or at least Jack the Ripper's London, that I shall be doing. Then I shall move on to other things. However, this is Commercial Street, and I now propose to turn this video to see it. I will walk down Commercial Street in the direction of Spitalfields, and I'll talk about the area as I do that. I think I already mentioned that Commercial Street is the continuation of the commercial road that links Whitechapel with the docks that were opened in 1802. And the commercial road was built a few years after that. The original commercial road only came up to Whitechapel, didn't go any further, so they laid out Commercial Street in the 1840s to connect with the Spitalfields fruit and vegetable market. It was the East Enders' Covent Garden, if you like to think of it that way. It was a wholesale market for fruit and vegetables, and it had grown over the years. It was actually a disaster as far as the neighbourhood was concerned, having this huge market in the middle of this area, because it brought in people from far afield, all over the country really, well, or certainly all over the East Midlands. They used to come down into Spitalfields, and of course they'd have to stay overnight, and then they'd open up these cheap hotels for that purpose. And what happened was that all the respectable houses that were owned by people, ordinary people in this district, were then sold up to property developers, and these became the common lodging houses. And so you had an unstable, a rootless population, and that's what really damaged the social fabric of the area, plunged into tremendous, terrible poverty, and it took a long time to move out of it. Anyway, what we're now doing is making our way down Commercial Street, and when this was laid out, what they had to do was knock down houses that were already homes to many hundreds of people. And so they displaced a lot of people who then had to go and find accommodation in the other common lodging houses nearby, which just added to the problem, overcrowding. You had an average of about 700 people per acre in this part of London, at a time when the average for the whole of London was something like 56. Anyway, having just come down here, I'm now going to turn over to the right to show you the University Settlement. Oh, there's a blue plaque up there, so let's go and read it, find out what it has to say. I love blue plaques. Whenever I see blue plaques, I can't pass by without noting what it says. Now, here it talks about, Dr. Jimmy Mallon, CH, 1874 to 1961, Warden of Toynbee Hall, champion of social reform, lived here. Well, I'm surprised it doesn't tell you anything about the Reverend Samuel Barnett or his wife, Olivia Barnett, because these were the people who really set up this place. The Reverend gentleman was the vicar of St Jude's Church, and he was also an undergraduate, or was a graduate I should say, from Oxford University, and it was he who was responsible for setting up what was known as this university settlement. It was a place that had been, as the name said, it was a settlement in right in the heart of one of the most deprived parts of London, if not the most deprived. And it was a place where graduates or undergraduates from Oxford could come and study the condition of the poor people of this district. And there were many social advantages to doing that. They started giving lessons in arithmetic and all the sort of useful subjects that can help people get jobs and get them out of poverty. So this was set up by a man called Arnold Toynbee in 1884. No, let me just correct that. He died in 1883, but it was named after this man, Arnold Toynbee, when it was set up in 1884. Now, Arnold Toynbee is not the historian who wrote the study of history. That was another Arnold Toynbee. The Toynbee family were very distinguished in the terms of social reform. You have Polly Toynbee, who writes for The Guardian, and she also is a member, a descendant of that family. But they have quite a distinguished lineage, if you like, of worthy causes. And this was one of them. It was the university settlement. It was a place that would reach out to the poor people of the district and give them the educational opportunities that would alleviate their poverty and their condition, help them to improve their lives. Clement Attlee, the Labour Prime Minister, now he was the warden, I think, or professor, or had some very prominent position within Toynbee Hall. So there's been a number of distinguished academics and Labour leaders who have been connected with this place, and it's in many ways the birthplace of English socialism. So we'll just take one last look at it before we go on. But anyway, we'll continue, because as we do continue and make our way down here, leading off over on the right hand side, we have Wentworth Street. And I think I mentioned before, if you see my earlier videos, Wentworth Street was very much involved with the murder of Martha Tabram. So that is Wentworth Street, and we'll just continue the same vein down here. So the whole idea of these videos was to help people to, if they were coming to London, to give them some idea of how to find their way around, if they were particularly interested in seeing the scenes of the murder of Jack the Ripper. That was really the whole point. And also to show them really how the district now looks today, over 130 years later. And of course it's very, very different now from what it was then. So we go forward, and as we do that, in a moment we've got another leading off on the right hand side. This is Thrawl Street, and once upon a time, a long time ago, there was a warren of back alleyways around there where you'd have lots of common lodging houses and prostitution and God knows what going on. But anyway, it's all very different today, of course. This is a highly respectable area, let me add that. Right, so we now continue. Just to show you what the district used to look like, how it looks today. And it's still very much part of a working and living part of London. Now, here, this is interesting. Here, as you'll see, we have Lolesworth Close. And Lolesworth Close used to be known as Flower and Dean Street. And Flower and Dean Street, according to the calculations, Kim Rossmer and one or two other people reckon that Jack the Ripper used to live in Flower and Dean Street. Well, this is all that is left. In fact, obviously it would go beyond those railings all the way down to Brick Lane. But anyway, this is, or was, all that's left of Flower and Dean Street, now known as Lolesworth Close, and reckoned to be the worst street in the whole of London. Actually, Dorset Street, which is not so far now, also has been completely destroyed, also vies for that title. Turn round. And not so far from here, a man called George Hutchinson. Now, he was a man who gave evidence to the police in relation to the murder of Mary Jean Kelly. He was out and about at 2 o'clock in the morning of the 9th of November, and he gave evidence to the police to say that he would have been standing, would have been around about here, not so very far away from here. Yes, let's say around about this space. He was approached by Mary Kelly, who'd come out looking for a customer, and she solicited him and asked him if he would give her sixpence, and he said at that time he had no money at all. And so Mary Kelly walked off, and George Hutchinson said that as she made her way back, she got entangled in a conversation with a man who had a tall man with a very heavy overcoat trimmed with astrakhan fur. And George Hutchinson said, well, he had a good look at him, and then he walked on for a while, and of course those two followed on behind. This is Fashion Street, ladies and gentlemen, here on the right. Fashion Street, which does take you all the way up to Brick Lane if you go far enough. But anyway, I was just talking about George Hutchinson. When George Hutchinson was here, Mary Kelly and this man with the astrakhan coat, or the coat that was trimmed with astrakhan fur, passed by, and George Hutchinson said that he noted the details of what this man was wearing, a ruby, watch chain with a ruby on it, or something that looked a bit like a ruby. And then what he did here, he turned down into Dorset Street. Well, you can't see Dorset Street because Dorset Street has vanished. That is White's Row, directly ahead of us. And Dorset Street, you can see this very tall modern building. Dorset Street was sort of halfway along. It's now completely disappeared. You just watched them as they went along, and then followed them a little way, and then stood outside Miller's Court in Dorset Street as he watched the man, or Mary Kelly, take this man up the alley into her room. And he hung about for about 3/4 of an hour or so, and then left. And really the suggestion was put out that this man with the astrakhan coat was Jack the Ripper. Well, we have to be very careful what George Hutchinson says, because George Hutchinson, he made a very good observation, detailed observation of this man, but it was a bit too detailed. And there are people, and I'm including one of them, thinking that really what he wanted to do, he had some grudge against somebody who used to walk around with a very heavy coat trimmed with astrakhan fur, and was just simply trying to get him into trouble with the police. and it was just a revenge. So I would be very careful before I accepted that information. Anyway, just before I move on, I'd like to have another look at Fashion Street, because if Flower and Dean Street is a likely neighbourhood for the home of Jack the Ripper, then so is Fashion Street. We'll just have a look at Fashion Street. As I say, that takes you all the way up to Brick Lane. I won't go all the way up there, we'll just have to come back again. And then again, if we turn around, you can see White's Row, and that's again another potentially a possible location for the home of Jack the Ripper. I talked about Annie Millward, who lived at number 8. That's halfway down over on the left-hand side. That's where she lived. Whether the attack on her took place, that would have been in February of 1888. Whether the attack on her actually took place in that street is uncertain from the evidence that she gave, but it's possible. Anyway, we'll make our way down here, and we'll be going past Christchurch Spitalfields, which is just will appear very shortly over on the right hand side. And as we make our way down here, we can look over the road, and indeed where it says 91 Black Ridge. Do you see that, ladies and gentlemen? That was the site of what used to be Dorset Street all those years ago. That's completely vanished, along with Miller's Court and the home of Mary Kelly. Anyway, but that's where it was. So let's move on, and as we move on from here, what I have to do is lean back and show you the magnificent church with its spectacular spire. And this, ladies and gentlemen, is Christchurch Spitalfields, one of the great masterpieces of the architect Nicholas Hawksmoor, who was a pupil of Sir Christopher Wren. He designed in what we call the English Baroque style, and this church was consecrated in the year 1728. And it completely dominates the neighbourhood. And I say the church was consecrated in 1728, and when the church was consecrated, that steeple there held 10 bells. 10 Bells is the name of the pub on the corner here, directly in front of us, leading into Furnier Street and Commercial Street. This was a pub which had been frequented many, many times by Mary Kelly. And of course it's now known throughout the world. So we'll cross over the road here, and what I propose to do now is to take us into Spitalfields Market. So, like good and obedient little citizens, we will just stand here and wait for the lights to change so we get a green signal. We shan't jaywalk and just cross over the road as others are doing. Right, here we go. There we are. Now, Spitalfields Market. Once upon a time, as I said, all this was open countryside. You just had fields, and these were the hospital fields, the fields that belonged to the Hospital of St Mary, the Hospital of St Mary of Bethlehem. And when the area started to develop in the early 1600s, King Charles I granted a license for a market All that was sort of upset by the civil war that took place shortly afterwards, and then King Charles II re-established the idea of a local market. So this became very closely associated with the area and gave a lot of employment. Now this was a fruit and vegetable market along the lines very similar to Covent Garden, and it was here for many years. Eventually it closed down in 1991, and ever since then it's become a place for, it's been still a market, as you say. It still has that sort of market atmosphere, but for arts and crafts, and for things like cups of tea or coffee. And in fact there are pubs and restaurants, and this is a really active place to come out and to enjoy yourself, to relax. So it's not a place for work, at least not anymore. It's a place, a sort of shopping mall, and a place where you can go and get a meal, or you can just have tea or coffee or whatever you like. And yes, it's a place if that's the sort of thing you like. Any beanie here for £20. Jewellery. What about that then? Well, that's nice. So that's just the sort of thing that you can expect to find here. More jewellery. More jewellery. Leather belts. More stuff to eat. Pubs. And there we have it. Right, so let's go on. We'll come out of here, and as we do this we make our way forward now, and coming out of the marketplace I propose now to turn round to the right and come back onto Commercial Street. As I do this, oh rats, hang on. Coming back onto Commercial Street, direct ahead of us we have Hanbury Street. And we've been to Hanbury Street before when I was talking about the murder of Annie Chapman at number 29, and I pointed out to you that number 29 has long since disappeared, but anyway, the street is still there. Get another view of the church and its beautiful spire. There we go, all the way around, and we will continue making our way up Commercial Street a little way. We're not going to go all the way down Commercial Street. It eventually takes you into Bishopsgate, then it goes across into Great Eastern Street and then up to Old Street, but we don't have to go quite that far. What I propose to do is to turn around to the left hand side, make my way down here into Folgate Street. So this is Folgate Street. Now, going back a bit into history, at the end of the 17th century we had a people known as the Huguenots. They were French Protestants who were being actively persecuted by King Louis XIV. and he published the revocation of the Edict of Nantes in 1685. The Edict of Nantes was an edict of toleration between Catholics and Protestants in France, and the revocation of the Edict of Nantes was the edict which actually simply withdrew that toleration. So many French Protestants actually left France and came to London, and they settled in Spitalfields, which was just at that time in the process of development. And when they came here, they brought with them their skills, particularly in silk weaving. This is where the silk weavers used to live, and they lived and worked here really from the end of the 1600s right through the 1700s. Well, I should say to the end of the 1700s. And then, like all other communities, as one generation gave way to a next, they settled into the general population, the British population, and were assimilated. Nevertheless, they left behind them marks of and the indications of where they had been and where they had settled originally, and this is certainly one of them. So Elder Street, St Mary's Spital. Let's say the Church of St Mary, the Hospital of St Mary of Bethlehem was built here in the 1200s, and it became a place where they specialised in taking patients with mental disorders, and so it became the Hospital of St Mary of Bethlehem, better known as Bedlam, and that's why they call any madhouse a Bedlam, or Bedlam is a place of total disorder. Anyway, they moved from here at one time, and then they moved down into Liverpool Street, and then into Moorfields, and then they moved into the site which is now occupied by the Imperial War Museum. So that was originally the Bethlehem Museum, or the Bethlehem Institute, and after that they moved off to Broadmoor in Hampshire, which is an institution for the criminally insane. Exactly the sort of place that Jack the Ripper might have ended up if he had actually been caught. But here we are, ladies and gentlemen. I want to point this place out to you because I think you'll find it interesting if you get the chance. We have Denis Severs House here, although it's not marked as that. Denis Severs House. Am I right?
That's right.
Yeah, I am right. I thought I'd be right. Here, it's worth pointing out to you. Number 18 Folgate Street, ladies and gentlemen. Denis Severs was an American who came to London in the 1970s and fell in love with it, and he bought this house when this area was derelict, and he did it up. He improved it, but he kept the historical style, and it's now a place where you can go and visit, and it's been made up for a family known as the Jarvis family. They were a family of Huguenots who settled in this house, and if you go inside, by the way, you have to arrange to go inside. You can't just walk in and buy tickets. You have to go into Denis Severs House. If you look it up on Google, you can take it up from there. There's obviously a fee to go in and do this. But when you walk in and you walk around here, you'll see it almost like the Murray Celeste, if you know about that story about the ship that was left on the high seas. Suddenly everybody abandoned it for no apparent reason. It was just left to float, and some people came on board and found this extraordinary ship that had no crew on it. Well, if you come in here, you'll see that it's almost as if the Jarvis family have been scared away for some extraordinary reason, leaving everything, just dropping everything. And so you It is a museum, but it's rather unlike any other museum you could ever imagine. It's just left as things would be. So there's food sort of scattered around all over the table and unmade beds and all that sort of stuff. But it's just an interesting place to go and see. So let me just show you again. It is number 18, and it's number 18 Folgate Street, and it's known as Denis Severs House. And if you want to know more about it, I would go into Google, I suppose, in the first instance, and learn more about it. Just have a look at the little side roads around here. This is to show you where the original Bedlam used to be located. And there we have it, ladies and gentlemen. I really have now come to the end of my series of videos about the Ripper murders. Although I intend to go on and do many, let's just switch back. There we go. I intend to do other videos. I've got rather used to this. I look back at the other videos I've done on Jack the Ripper and I cringe because they're so badly made. I have at least been factual. I will say that anything I've said hasn't just come off the top of my head. I've taken the trouble to research and get my facts straight. And if I say anything that is just a matter of conjecture, then I point out that it is just conjecture and not a definitely established fact. So I'll be going on from here, and I will be doing other videos on aspects of London, but this is the last one about Jack the Ripper. What I propose to do is to redo them all during the summer of this year, 2025, by which time I hope that I shall have mastered this technology, and I shall also be able to use things like text and photographs and spooky music just to create a bit of atmosphere. But anyway, that's all for another day. I'll just take you down to the street here, the end of the street, and then we'll be into Bishopsgate. And I will leave you there, ladies and gentlemen. So let me just turn this thing around. Here we go. So this place would be, the point about this, doing these videos is just to show you this place would be interesting to visit, even if Jack the Ripper hadn't committed all these murders. There's a great deal of London, the history of London, bound up in these places. And if you're the sort of person who likes things that are a little bit off the established tourist trail, this is certainly the place to come to. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for your attention, and I hope to see you, in fact I shall see you, in the next videos that I shall be making. So over and out for the time being.